A little. Okay, we are recording. Cool. Well, as you know, I'm presenting on religion and in-group attitudes. So hold on, let me share my screen with you. I have to send a request again. Okay, cool. Um, Screen, share. Awesome. You see it?
Um, I do, yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Slideshow. Okay, perfect. And then give me one sec. Um, okay, so I'll be telling you about religion and in-group attitudes, kind of some of the literature on it, and then what I plan to do with this type of work.
Mhm.
So previous research has indicated varied findings in attitudes toward in-group messages among religious groups. On the one hand, some findings indicate the role of message source as a powerful tool for persuasion. If a message is coming from an in-group member, it is likely to be perceived with an increased level of trustworthiness or shared values. However, research also provides evidence for a social psychology concept known as the black sheep effect, which is a tendency for groups to evaluate a deviant in-group member more harshly or negatively than an out-group member who also deviates from the group norms. The question is, when a certain persuasive message comes from an in-group source but deviates from group norms or morals, what is the effect on the attitudes of the audience? Does that differ across religious affiliations? Perfect. So, religion and morality. Research findings link religiosity to in-group favoritism and out-group derogation. So that means kind of evaluating in-group members more positively, but also derogating or harshly judging out-group members. Participants primed with religious words regarded outgroup members more harshly than those primed with neutral words. I thought that was especially interesting. Um, and then messages tend to be more persuasive if the source is an in-group member, but that's only if the message is relevant to the group morals or meaningful in some other way. So either way, with these findings, it's kind of contingent on religion and meaning within the study itself. And then in another study, religiosity was positively correlated with harsh judgment towards abortion, a violation of Catholic values. The participants were French Catholic. So this all has to really do with morality, group morals, and meaning for the group. You'll find that's kind of the basis for a lot of the attitudes going on here. And then in-group attitudes, messages can be more persuasive from in-group members. Positive intergroup biases are associated with religion and religiosity, like I said earlier, and messages tend to be less effective if the message source is an outgroup member. And then there's the black sheep effect. So the black sheep effect is often triggered by social scenarios that violate the values or morals of a group. Outgroup counterparts deviating from the same morals are judged less harshly than the in-group members who did the same. And the French Catholic study found that women who got abortions received harsher judgment if they were in-group members versus out-group members. So judged more harshly if they themselves were religious or Catholic. But this effect is also found within other group identities as well. Other studies have found it with university students, families, and yeah, it really all just depends on the group, but this definitely isn't unique to religion. It's just widely found in religion and correlated with religiosity. So, a lot of this has to do with the role of social identity and social identity theory. So, according to the theory, people tend to think of themselves as group members rather than individuals. There's a concept known as self-categorization, which is the process of organizing individuals into groups and categories. This is kind of how our brain makes sense of the world and makes sense of our place within social context. And these processes serve as a strong social determinant for many attitudes and behaviors in given situations. And this can ultimately result in ignorance of individual differences and the tendency to compare one's own group with others. So social identification itself is how certain group memberships reflect on the sense of self. And we also have to ask what the emotional significance of the group is. Attitudes and behaviors are going to differ across groups based on the group's own meaning. So I think a lot of times these extreme attitudes and the black sheep effect is often correlated with religion because it tends to be a pretty significant group identity. And if an individual cares about the group or feel it is important to their identity, they may direct more of effort to hold up that group's positive image and solidarity. This can explain the relationship between high religiosity and in-group favoritism slash out-group derogation. So, if in-group messages tend to be more persuasive, but the black sheep effect, sorry, is triggered by violated morals, what happens when the message is directly criticizing religion? So this is what I hope to find out with my own study. So my next steps are aiming to measure the effects of criticism on social judgment and feelings of religious struggle. I'm interested to see whether people's religious struggle is affected by strong opinions against religion. And my hypothesis is non-directional. And I'll explain more why once I get to the methodology of my study, but it's non-directional. And then data collection will begin in the spring, and it'll be presented at our MPA and Festival of Excellence. So here's that methodology I was talking about. I plan to have participants directed to an online Qualtrics survey, and then there they'll kind of indicate their religious affiliation first, from which they can choose LDS, spiritual, non-religious, or other. And then they take a pretest of 18 items taken from the religious and spiritual struggle scale. That's the RSS. And I'm using specific scales from it, which are interpersonal, moral, ultimate meaning, and doubt. Um, and specifically excluding questions that are more about belief about God, or there was also a subscale in the RSS that was um, like demonology or like belief in demons, which I thought was kind of interesting, but it's not relevant to this study because I specifically want to focus on criticizing religion as an institution and to find out how people feel about that. And so participants will be exposed to a vignette and they'll read a piece of religious criticism. They'll either be under the perception the message source is a lifelong member of religion or an atheist. And then participants will take a post test of those exact same items from the RSS. And then they'll take a one item measure of social judgment that I created, where they answer the question, this attitude reflects my group's morals. So we can find out kind of people's social judgment of that. And then answer two open-ended questions at the end, which are how did the prompt make you feel? And how important is it to you to openly discuss religion? And then going back, my hypothesis is non-directional, which means I am expecting a difference in the RSS scores between the before the criticism and after the criticism. But I'm not sure whether they'll go down or up because of that conflicting literature. I think if religious participants tend to be more persuaded by this in-group message, RSS would probably go up and they'd feel more religious struggle. But if the black sheep effect occurs and we see people kind of wanting to maintain this positive group image and solidarity, I think the RSS will go down. So I could really see it going either way. And then there's a creative component, which is what makes this project honors worthy. So my goal is to take this research further by adding a qualitative component and using it to produce a creative deliverable, which is so I'll kind of go around campus and ask questions about people's experience with religion and overall their positive and negative feelings about it, and kind of stitch answers together to basically create a small collection of poems. So that's my little creative spin on it. Um, and so I want to talk a little bit about why this even matters. I included a picture here of LDS Temple. This is the Salt Lake Temple. And these buildings are very easily seen all over Utah. I think whether you've grown up here or you've just lived here a while, or maybe you just moved here, it doesn't take a genius to know that the religious aspect is everywhere. In a religiously rich culture, belief systems and social groups have effects on every one of us, I believe. And so it's important to study this, and religious struggle is pretty strongly tied to negative mental health outcomes, more anxiety, less social support, things like that could lead to more depression. And so this research can tell us about the relationship between criticism and mental health, but also about the social support or lack thereof that those who are struggling might be getting. Social support can also have mental health implications. Um, and I really just, I think it's worth giving attention to this topic and trying to find out how many people might be struggling within their own culture and struggling to openly express these feelings, which can then kind of add to that negative mental health aspect there. And I'm a researcher. I always want to say I'm completely objective, but I also just, I really believe in this type of research and giving a voice to like people like me who are struggling within their own community. So for the conclusion, the in-group processes of religious individuals have been well researched. Religiosity is correlated with higher in-group favoritism and out-group derogation. More research is needed on in-group members criticizing religion directly and social responses to that. Would religious participants be more likely to be persuaded by the message due to in-group trustworthiness, or would the black sheep effect occur? More research is also needed on the relationship between criticism and feelings of religious struggle. My study aims to address these issues. Yeah, and those are my references. Do you have any questions for me?
I guess my only question would be, what do you kind of went over this with your hypothesis. Um, so actually I don't really know if I have a question. I was going to ask what you think you'll see specifically in the qualitative responses. I really, really love the creative component.
Yeah,
That's really awesome.
yeah,
Is it kind of like a blackout poetry kind of thing? Like when you stitch together the bits of the different answers? I just think that's so cool. Like maybe a little bit more
yeah.
about the creative component.
Yeah. So I'm not quite sure yet. I'm still thinking about the methods with that. And I think I don't necessarily think the poems will be exclusively content from those questions. But I do want to stitch them together, but also add my own
Yeah.
creative voice and my own writing voice, and that's something I want to develop. But it's more I'm trying to just get inspiration from um, the diverse and varied experiences of those on campus, and kind of create a creative overall picture of religion in our community. But yeah,
That's awesome.
thanks.
I just saw the 10-minute alert, so I'm gonna jump really quickly. I'll
Yeah.
probably I really love that creative component. Oh my gosh.
Thanks.
That's
Yeah,
so
I'll
cool.
stop sharing my screen. If I can figure out how. Okay, wait.
Okay.
Stop share. Okay.
I'll be, I'll speed through.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. We're talking before it, so it's okay. So my study is on doomsday prepping and current quality of life. and I'm working with Dr. Warner on this. So, first thing I wanted to do for the literature review is define doomsdays throughout history. So, one of the first ones I talk about in my literature review is Y2K, which was kind of this scare where people thought technology would fail because computers wouldn't be able to read 00 as relating to the year 2000. There was an article from the Los Angeles Times where a journalist went to a wealthy lawyer's home and saw that he was a doomsday prepper. He was a 35-year-old lawyer who was well respected in the community. But when the journalist opened the door, there were 12 months worth of packaged meals, canisters of propane, a new shotgun, and several boxes of shells leaning against a wall. Um, Showing that kind of just anybody could fall into these beliefs and habits, especially people or even people that you wouldn't recognize or assume would have these beliefs or exhibit these behaviors. Another scare throughout history was the Mayan calendar in 2012, which was this belief that a planet would collide with Earth and then the Earth's poles would switch. And there was a senior scientist at NASA, David Morrison, who remembers getting a bunch of questions about the end of the world from people who were genuinely afraid. So now looking at the psychology of preppers, doomsday believers tend to get up and pick up more easily with their lives if they have strong networks of friends and families. However, this is often not the case because individuals who fall into these beliefs or these behaviors tend to not have strong social support groups in the first place, which is something that I'll talk about a little bit more. Individuals who encounter these predictions on the internet become isolated and feel lost when the world doesn't end because this thing they've been working towards for so long suddenly just isn't there anymore. Um, I really like this really long quote. It's really long. I don't want to read the whole thing, but I do like the part at the beginning. Part of the reason failed doomsdays can be so traumatic is because they appear to be a way for people to grapple with their own mortality, which kind of connects to the idea of terror management theory, which I'll talk about here. Terror management theory is the belief that individuals are kind of grasping for something to minimize the existential dread they feel, because as human beings, what sets us apart from other animals according to terror management theory, is that we are uniquely aware of our own death. So we act in ways that try to minimize that existential dread. So terror management theory can be connected to doomsday prepping because these behaviors would focus on relieving anxiety related to a person's death, which could kind of explain why people might fall into these beliefs in the first place. So the impact of doomsday on children, which is kind of funneling down to what my research is on. Loved ones of doomsday preppers often experience trauma that could be comparable to ACEs or adverse childhood experiences. When children experience ACEs, they often face mental health problems as well as reported lower school attendance and trouble learning. Looking at studies as well of children who are raised in cult-like environments, while a parent might find relief from anxiety and doomsday prepping, their child would experience trauma, missing out on key developmental stages and experiencing isolation from their peers. Um, this is all of the setup to the present study, which is going to further understandings of doomsday prepping related behaviors on individual well-being in order to present solutions that can increase quality of life by individuals who have been impacted by such prepping. So I plan to do this, or I have already collected data through a Qualtrics survey. There were two qualitative questions in the beginning that asked for past experiences and how the individual feels those experiences might be presently impacting them still today. And then they're invited to fill out a survey, which is the Young Adult Quality of Life questionnaire, which measures things like I'm able to get out of bed easily in the morning, I don't experience aches and pains, just quality of life things in general. But I'm looking at that in relation to whether or not the participants have experienced doomsday prepping in their childhood. I'm planning to analyze my data using thematic analysis, specifically through NVivo, which is what's going to make this project honors worthy because I'll be looking at the qualitative answers using NVivo, doing all of it through there rather than SPSS. Looking at patterns, impactful quotes, things that represent the different themes that I'll find, with consideration as to how these themes demonstrate positive or negative effects from experiences with doomsday prepping. Already looking at the data I've collected, there are people who say that it's made them more organized today, or that practices like stockpiling food have made them more aware of what resources they use, so that they in turn like don't have as much food waste, is one of the reported things I've seen a lot already in the qualitative answers, which I think is interesting because I definitely came at this project from the viewpoint that it would be negative or inherently negative. Um, but there are limitations. So, a broad understanding by participants of what doomsday prepping is. because most of my data is collected in Cedar City, I think food storage is something that's coming up a lot just because of the high percentage of individuals who are Latter-day Saint and having that kind of being told to have extra supplies is something that a lot of people are talking about. So
Such a Mormon thing.
yeah. So I'm seeing it a lot in my answers, and I'm wondering if maybe the idea of doomsday just has such a different idea in everyone's heads. Like
Hmm.
people consider it differently, so maybe people don't see what they did as being prepping behavior. I'd spoken to Dr. Bartley with this as well, and she said that in rural communities such as like Alaska, where because she'd worked at the University of Anchorage, she was saying that a lot of people would have like excess food, and they wouldn't view it as prepping just because they live in a rural community and it's hard to get things. If the ports close, you can't get the
Yeah.
food. So I'm wondering if that could impact participant responses. A limited participant pool, which is something I think we always have an issue with. And then just few safeguards to ensure that all data is legitimate, which I think is a limitation of survey data in general, especially when students are incentivized with SONA credits, where
Yeah.
they just kind of want to click through and get done with the survey as quick as possible.
Hmm.
But going forward, I'm going to start analyzing my data through NVivo. It's already been collected. Um, and probably a little SPSS for the Young Adult Quality of Life questionnaire, but specifically NVivo for those qualitative responses. Yeah, thank you so much. Do you have any questions?
I don't think so. I just think that's really cool.
Yeah. And I think we managed to get in there in the time. I'll go ahead
We
and I'll stop
did.
sharing my screen if I
Okay,
can.
I'll stop recording.